All right. So thank you so much for joining us on the Arctic Indigenous Investment Series. So this is a series that we just try to talk with Indigenous corporations or investors, and we're really just talking about kind of Yukon investment topics, and it's pretty wide ranging in topics, and this is all unscripted. So thank you, Conrad, for coming in.
Happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Conrad Browne, fancy title of President and CEO of Dakwakada Capital Investments. I've been in the Yukon now for just over 3.5 years.
Great. And so tell me a bit about Dakwakada Investments.
So Dakwakada came out of the self-governing agreement back in the late 80s. It's gone through a couple of different versions of itself, but we're now considered to be the private equity arm of the Champagne-Ajac First Nation. We're blessed with a very strong, growing community corporation, which has got Kerry Johnson as their CEO. So anything that happens on the traditional territory or settlement lands has to flow through Shawshoe. And then what we would do is we would put our equity into any projects within the territory, so to speak. But we do most of our investment outside of the territory.
Yeah. And, I have this conversation with a lot of individuals, and I look at Dakwakada as being one of the bigger, more mature wealth entities out there. And you would be familiar with my First Nations, TTLP, Tlainakhtwe Development Corp. I would say that, they're very similar in that private equity, basically a private equity firm invests where the market is, has a high cap expenditure when it comes to investments, and typically wanting majority stake in those investments for that control.
It's, yes, very, very similar for sure. The best way that I can describe Dakwakada would be that the elevator pitch is any minimum deal is $5 million, maximum deal of $50 million for any one project. Couple of other things. We have to be 51% owners. We will control any of the businesses that we get involved in. Mm-hmm. 3 to 7 year horizon, and then we would obviously try to exit and get our multiple on the exit. We bring value to those businesses through expertise and finance and safety and HR and different things that we can add value to. Mm-hmm. We're industry agnostic. It doesn't matter to us, but we try not to be too focused in any one industry, as everybody understands you need to be spread out a little bit.
Yeah.
And speaking truthfully, I think right now we're probably a little bit too tight to construction. Just about everything that we do currently rolls back to construction in one way or another, whether that's plastic manufacturing. We do overhead garage doors. We do large, heavy civil. We do skylights. We do windows and doors. So a lot of the stuff either directly or indirectly flows back to construction. So we're interested in looking at other areas that we're going to move into here in the future.
Yeah. I really want to dive into that, but maybe before we get too deep into the corporation, the history, and the assets, let's maybe talk about you a little bit. Just before we started recording, you did mention that you were based out of Vancouver Island. Maybe repeat that part,
Sure.
Your last few kind of professional roles.
So just prior to coming up to the Yukon, I was head of Indigenous engagement for the Teal Jones Group, which at the time was the largest privately held forest company on the West Coast.
And what does that mean, forest company?
So they had forest interest. They held tree farm licenses. They owned shingle mills. They owned lumber mills. They owned kilns. They owned specialty fiber plants. Their one mill, when it was going full tilt in a 10-hour shift, would have close to 350 people.
Okay.
Just the one mill. That doesn't include all their operations. They've got mills down in the United States too. They've gone through a bit of a hard time, just like forestry in British Columbia.
Yeah.
So they're struggling a little bit right now, which is unfortunate because the two brothers who own it are amazing old-time, long-time loggers, BC guys that are very proud of being from BC and driving that industry. So I did that for 2 years. Just as a quick side, I was the face of the Canadian's largest What did they end up calling it? Act of civil disobedience out in the forest. There was, for months and months and months, we had lots of people tying themselves to trees and burying themselves in the ground. And I ended up being the front person for Teal Jones. So that was interesting. Not the first time in my life that people were threatening my lives and threatening my family, but certainly in that context, it was a little different.
Okay.
So I don't mind people throwing stuff at me.
Yeah.
So it always keeps it interesting. But prior to that, the one job that gave me probably the most pride because of the relationships that I created was with the Yukon First Nation in Port Hardy. The traditional territory for the nation was actually across 12 and a half miles of very dangerous water through the Queen Charlotte Strait. And then the traditional territory actually holds 52% of all the coastline of Canada.
Okay.
Within their traditional territories.
Wow.
So quite large. When I started with them, they didn't have very much going on at all. And then we were considered to be the fastest overnight wonder. And I always joke it was 3 years to make the overnight wonder, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we did 3 years of planning with the community, leadership, elders, youth councils, making sure that we were going down the right track. And blessed with a brand new comprehensive community plan that was driven by our community, by that community. And when I was handed that, there was a section in there that was economic development. It wasn't prescriptive. It was very much an open book.
Mm-hmm.
So then it took me 3 years to build out that book, add some chapters, some rules, some different things like that. And within the first 6 months of actually operating business, we had 6 business lines and probably 160 people working for us.
And is that more of a startup or acquisition based?
That was all greenfield startup.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was hair straight back, very busy. Lots of, even though we planned and did everything very much in a succession plan, moving ourselves forward, there was still some angst from the community because it was very much unknown.
Mm-hmm.
But very proud of that work and so thrilled that the community has gone as far as they've gone and continue to grow, and their businesses are still healthy and moving forward. And it's great to be able to look back and see that I had a little part in growing some seeds. So.
I was going to ask you that question and so I come from a similar background in my community, and you do all this stuff. And then one of my mentors, Justin Furby, he hired me to be part of Yukon Development Corp. And I just said, well, what do you do when, things start going upside down in some of your projects? He's like, the trick is, Blair, to never look back. And I was like, I can't do that. And in my situation, I went back, I corrected those projects, and one of them being the the Tesla biomass project,
right,
being a success story, and it wasn't going to be unless it had that heavy hand moment. But for you, and you had a long tenure there at the place you were just talking about. Was it long? It was long enough where things were moving in the right direction. You look back, things are still moving in the right direction.
Yeah, similar to what Mr. Furby said is sometimes it's better not to look back because you're not sure how they're going to handle the baby that you helped create.
Exactly.
So I don't look back often. One of the things that happened during my tenure there is we made some pretty interesting deals with the BC government to get some tenure. And then I made a side deal with the forest company that was working with us. And we all worked together and were able to raise just over $8 million to go to building a new big house. They hadn't had a big house ever in Port Hardy. So it took a few more years after I left, and they just did the grand opening 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Amazing.
So when you walk into that building and know what all had to happen to have it come to fruition and how important it was really exciting and certainly was very emotional for everybody. So
yeah,
it was pretty cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And then anything else in your background you want to talk about?
I've had a pretty crazy career, my friend. It's been interesting. So before working for the First Nation, I actually worked for the BC government.
Okay.
I was the lead compliance and enforcement officer for the Nadina Forest District down in Burns Lake.
Okay.
So that was an interesting time. There was also some strife happening in the forest back then when I was running that. So so a little bit of enforcement background, and some political stuff too, working within government. I've been an entrepreneur. I've owned my own mill.
Really?
I've done a few different things in my career. I was a professional fighter at one time, and
No way.
yeah, I played semi-professional
awesome.
basketball in Italy.
Okay.
Red Seal chef, 4th class power engineer, registered forest technologist. So I just
Okay.
kind of put my head down and go to it. So
I think you are the most interesting speaker we've had on the show so far. I could safely say that. Wow, that is, and it's so interesting how diverse people can be, right? You know, like the diversity of skills and experiences that you've had leading up to the work that you do, and how contributory or how they really lend well to a lot of what you're dealing with.
it does. The one thing that I'll say quite often when I meet somebody, especially in a business setting, because I don't have those fancy credentials behind my name. I don't got those letters and MBAs and things like that. But when things start going interesting, I'll always let everybody know it'll take a lot to pull the wool over my eyes. I've seen quite a bit of stuff and
Yeah.
been burnt quite a bit of times, quite a few times. And sometimes it's the hardest lessons that drive the deepest and you remember for the longest period of time. So
Yeah.
yeah, what I lack in that formal education, I make up in some pretty decent work ethic that my parents drilled into me, shall we say.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, and I think too about the investor table that we sit at, and just how much experience and how much confidence you have when you speak, and you add a lot of value to that table. And so it's very reflective in how you operate yourself, and how you the things that you put out there. So I just want to say that it's obvious that you have a very strong background in many things.
I appreciate that.
So you moved to the Yukon, you said 3.5 years ago, just under 4 years ago. I've had a bit of a background with Dakwakada. I've done work with Paul Gruner and Brian McDonald. One of the first jobs I ever got as a contractor was for Murray Arsenault to help with a website, do the content. Like, I'm not a website guy, but I went and interviewed the Bonnie Castles and getting Castle Rock kind of listed on the Dakwakada page. And I remember what an interesting story that was. They just acquired the asphalt assets.
Yes.
And they started getting into that business. And, it was so interesting interviewing the Bonnie Castles, the 3 generations of Bonnie Castles in this company that, I think at the time that was probably the biggest investment for Dakwakada.
Yes, certainly it was, and probably still is. Castle Rock would be probably 60% of our portfolio, if you would, overarching everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting in the 3.5 years that I've been involved to see the growth within Castle Rock in the new building, and very much the drive of the staff and all of our workers to continue that dream that the Bonnie Castles had, and now it's part of the CAFN dream and move it forward. So
Yeah.
I'm not. When I was talking about exit strategies and things like that, I don't think you'll ever see CAFN move away from Castle Rock. It's a pretty important piece, and a lot of pride and history there. So, yeah, it's interesting. And
Yeah, and we see that common too, right? That Indigenous wealth entities, they invest for the long haul.
yeah,
They're not day traders. They're not turning over and exiting investments. Typically, I wouldn't say that's all the time, but so that's not a surprise to hear.
yeah, and I don't want people that work at Northern or anything else, but everything else for us is we're in business to make money for the nation. So
Yeah.
if an opportunity comes along that makes perfect sense for us, then we can exit. There's no problem with that, right? But it has to make really good sense.
Yeah.
And the Northern one's interesting because there's 7 nations involved. So
And there's a bit of a history there too. I know my nation was involved with Northern years ago, and it's been kind of this really interesting business story. Do you have a little bit of that story to tell?
A little bit. The most modern or most recent part is I'm the actual interim president at Northern right now. We've been without a president since Joe McGilvery went back to government.
Right. He's the Yukon Energy Corp president, CEO. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when Joe left, I'm the chair of the board, and they asked if I would step up and just take that on for the interim period, and happy to do it. Learned lots for sure. Great crew there, a lot of longtime people with tremendous knowledge. So, but yeah, the history of Northern, again, bought it off of a family business, and then looked over to Alaska to see what we could be doing there. So Capital Glass is in Alaska, and we build and ship windows that way. The orange-haired guy down south has made that a lot more difficult over the last little while, for sure, including another 10% tariff last week. So
Right.
so it makes it interesting, and as you well know, have done this long enough, that money hates uncertainty.
Right.
So as soon as we can create some certainty again, I think things will continue to move in the right direction for sure. Northern is an interesting business, simply because it's the only window manufacturer north of 60. There might be one in Northern Ontario, but we like to claim we're the only one north of 60.
Is it majority Indigenous owned?
It's 100% Indigenous owned.
Yeah.
And the board is 100% Indigenous, and it's really it's a really neat experience to be there to watch the pride that people put into the product, and then drive around town like Whistle Bend here, and you see the new homes going up, and that's something I do whether I'm crazy or not, but I drive probably once every 2 weeks and check out stickers and windows. And if I don't see our sticker there, I go, why are we not in that house, right? So,
Are you in this house? Did you
didn't
check?
Usually people clean their windows once they move in. So
Right.
they
Okay.
pull
The sticker
stickers
goes away.
off.
Okay. Got it. Got it. Okay.
So yeah, but
where else would we have bought our windows from?
well, there's other opportunities
Is there?
in town.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't go into
Yeah. Yeah.
into telling too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, another majority-owned business, Kilrich, right?
Yeah.
So
And you guys are major investor in that?
we are not.
Oh, you're not?
No, but
okay.
that's another place you can get your
I
windows.
see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so we think that from a quality product and having it locally owned and operated, and First Nations owned and operated, is a big deal. So yeah, we're pretty proud when we see our windows in people's houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. And I mean, and I want to talk about other investments too, but Castle Rock, them being, it's all Indigenous owned, right? You guys 100% own.
We are 100%. Yeah.
100%. And in my community right now, with the new main administration building being built, Castle Rock was a major provider for all the groundwork and civil and the aggregate, and it's you definitely see them out there winning major work, and they got great equipment. You can tell that there's been a lot of reinvestment there, and very well run company by the looks of it.
Yeah, I would agree. The CapEx program that they work under for all of their equipment is one of the better ones I've seen. And again, the individuals that work within those departments take huge pride in that. So they've got it down to a science now, where they will operate a piece of equipment until they know exactly when it's going to start to cost more money than it probably should, and are quite willing to turn it over. So the CapEx is a really big deal. We are seeing a lot of pressure coming up from BC, from these larger companies. And
like Graham and...
Yeah, Graham's one of them, coal ash companies, and there's some pretty big players that are needing to keep their iron moving, right?
Yeah.
And they have way deeper pockets than we do, so they can come in with some very interesting bidding,
right?
Which the vast majority of the people in the north just can't compete with.
Right.
So as time moves on and our territory, Whitehorse specifically, is on the map of these companies because of the growth that's happened here. And I think they've all figured out they might have missed the bus a little bit, and they're coming now to make a bit of a difference.
Right.
So the market's getting a little bit more full than what we would like.
Right.
But that's okay. We'll continue to compete and
Yeah.
do the best job possible, and not rest on our laurels, but keep moving forward and doing what we need to do to keep growing that business.
Yeah. What other major investments does Dakwakada have?
We've got a plastic manufacturing company in Edmonton called Mac Plastics.
Oh, no way.
They do skylights as well. So they're a very large fabricator of custom-made skylights. Everything is handmade there. It's really quite a neat operation. You first walk in and it looks like something from the 1920s, but by the time the product comes out the other side, you can tell that it's almost artisanal in its quality and just how it looks and what it's going to look like. So they've done some major projects, a lot of those 1980s type of shopping malls that have the bigger, what are they called? It's kind of atriums.
Yeah.
Are all in need of redoing. So we've got a few pretty big projects. We've got a $500,000 project out in Swift Current. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll go just about anywhere.
Yeah.
With our product. We don't install, but we manufacture. And unfortunately for the folks that live in Edmonton over the last few weeks, there's been a tremendous amount of hail damage.
Yes. I experienced it.
Yeah.
I just drove in from Edmonton.
Okay.
And it punched holes through my the plastic ceiling of my RV.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I thought it was going to come through my windshield.
Yep. Yeah. So it's a tumultuous time up there right now, and insurance companies are being run off their feet. It's good for business, but nobody likes to make their business off of other people suffering. But we'll be responding to homeowners and others as quickly as we can to the request, and it's been busy, really busy the last couple of weeks.
Is that a big operation?
There's probably 16 to 20 people work there.
Okay.
Yeah, and they do other specialized plastic manufacturing too. So a lot of oil field. Just one example would be lockout boxes, plastic lockout boxes. So they manufacture those. Interesting things from little plastic clips that they put over barbed wire fences. So as they're building the roads in, they put these clips in so people in snowmobiles or dirt bikes or whatever don't mistakenly try to run through the barbed wire fence. So
right.
Yeah, little things that you wouldn't even think about, but the manufacturing happens, which is pretty cool. It's again it was a family business for many years, and I think we've had it now for 5 or 6 years, and it does well. It's not a multi-billion-dollar a year business, but it's one of those steady and keep going type of businesses, and gives us a decent return at the end of the year.
Right on. And that seems like such a unusual investment too, right? Specifically being in Edmonton and also kind of being one of those not quite at the forefront of your mind of what you should be invested in. But would you be willing to talk about where how you find some of these opportunities?
Yeah, the opportunities are if anything, we're overwhelmed by opportunities.
You're right.
And trying to find the right one that fits our investment model is the tricky part. We do a tremendous amount of due diligence in any business that we're looking at. So we absolutely budget for anywhere between 1% to 3% of the total cost of that deal will go towards due diligence. So when you're talking couple $100,000 going into due diligence, that's getting third-party accountants involved to make sure that everything's in line. The lawyers are involved and all sorts of different pieces. And if there's equipment involved, then you have to have assessments done and appraisals done on all the equipment. So we dig really deep and make sure that what is there is actually there, and that the business is something that can be run from a distance to some degree. I'm not a micromanager. My managers are hired to do a job, and if they don't do the job, then we have a conversation, obviously. But yeah, that particular business was acquired before my time, and the process worked for that business for sure. Yeah, it's an interesting one. But you're right; it's not a normal one.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of I was on vacation and I asked a guy what he did, and he said he manufactured the plastic bubbles in packaging. And he said, it's a $1 billion company.
Absolutely.
And I was just like, what?
Yeah.
He's like, we basically fill air into boxes.
Yeah.
He's like, we manufacture air.
Air. Yeah. Just off topic, but I was on a sailing trip off the coast of British Columbia, and we went past an island, and the guy who was running the boat said, "Any guesses on who owns that?" And it was a decent sized island. I said, "No idea." He says, "Okay, I'll give you $100 if you can guess what he manufactured to buy that island." And I have no idea. And he was the pop out in the turkey, self-basting turkeys.
Yeah.
And when the turkey was done, it popped out. He created that. It's like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
Things that people can do to create a really good return, right?
Yeah.
So Edmonton is definitely one of the places I fly to quite often, as is Kelowna and Victoria, where we have overhead doors, garage doors.
Okay.
Kelowna for the longest time was just going gangbusters, still is to some degree, but it has slowed down quite a bit in the last year or so.
Okay. Might be a lot of new homes needing to be built there too.
And again, off of the back of somebody's trouble, right?
Yeah.
But again, we're going to be there for our clients in that area and do what we can to get them back into a position of being able to have a house and then have everything that they need to go along with that. So
yeah.
Since I've been with the company, it's the third year. I've been 3.5 years, and it's the third year where fires affected one part of the territory that we operate in or another. So yeah. The overhead door business, when I first looked at coming up to take on this role, was one of the ones that scratched my head a little bit. Like, it's again, like, how does this all fit into the overall portfolio? And the notion, I think, and again, before my time, but I think the notion was that they were going to start acquiring a few mom and pops and then bring them together and look for a whale to come in and try to take them all.
Right.
What's transpired in the last year or so is there's been some pretty big players come into the market and have bought a number of the smaller companies. Haven't had anybody take a run at us yet, but I can't see it taking much more time. So that industry on itself is really starting to consolidate to a few pretty big players.
And so what is the product there?
Overhead garage doors.
Overhead garage doors. So it's the garage door manufacturer.
No, we just install.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The manufacturing, again, the old tariffs are a bit of a kick in the pants. Up until they started, probably 70% of the product came out of the States. So now we're actively looking at other ways to access other ways to manufacture. So there is a garage door manufacturer in Edmonton. So we try to utilize them. And then we've actually became a distributor for an offshore garage door called Star Pro. And we're quite proud of that product. We worked with the manufacturer to make sure it was going to meet or beat anything that we saw here. And so far, it's early days. It's been under a year. So we're breaking into the market with that, and we're quite happy with the product. So, but that's, if you would have said 2 years ago you'd be looking offshore for something like that, I would have said you're crazy. But we're being forced to do different things in business, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So that's part of that deal is we have a distribution center in Surrey where we land sea cans, and then we can bring all sorts of different products in and use our distribution center to get it out to the different areas. We have control of BC and the Yukon for that door product. So yeah, it's slowly growing.
Yeah.
I thought it would pick up a little quicker than it has, but I can be impatient at times.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we're going to continue to move that forward and deal with everything that gets thrown at us. So.
Yeah. And so when you acquire a company like that, do you typically integrate them into kind of your overall head office, right? And you kind of strip out the things that you can centralize and kind of reinforce the things that need to be kind of built out there so that it's essentially managed but kind of locally responsive.
Yes. So I don't know how much we bring into say Whitehorse from let's just use Edmonton as an example, we would hire and make sure that there's a great general manager. And ideally, if we're purchasing a company, I'll try to lock in the current management team or owner for a period of time.
Right.
Usually up to 3 years, with a very regimented exit plan for those individuals. So make sure we don't have any gap in capacity.
Yeah.
But so what we would do is we would make sure that their HR program is up to snuff, because we review our own HR program on an annual basis. So we know what's changed in the different areas from WorkSafe or whichever the governing bodies might be. So that's a big example. We'd make sure that their safety programs are up, that they're, again, we talk about CapEx. So we can bring a really great CapEx program like Castle Rock has, modify it and put it into just about any industry. HR, same thing. We will work really closely with those individuals to make sure that the HR is not only hiring, but we're letting people go when it has to happen in a respectful manner. And we're always being, because the laws change quite often within HR these days, it seems like. We're really cognizant of making sure we're on the right side of the legal stuff. So it makes it interesting from that perspective. And then finance, I've got a CFO, very talented CFO, Lo Buey, and she would make sure that she's monitoring from afar, implementing all of our systems. We're looking at a new ERP system that will be able to cross over into multiple disciplines.
Yep.
So once that decision's made and we start to make that implementation of that program, we'll be able to put that into any of the new acquisitions.
Yeah.
Which adds value and
Totally.
Yeah, makes it a lot easier. So we bring value to it and some expertise, and then we're there when they need us, and we monitor and make sure it's going in the right direction. So.
Yeah. I had a summer job with TTLP when I was going through university as a junior finance officer, and it was to integrate the new acquisitions into our ERP system.
Oh, very cool.
And so I had to interview them and all the businesses and create a singular reference system that when we're talking about, they use this code, we use this code, what's the best code? And there was a bunch that really made sense, but there was some then you had to go validate and create kind of like basically integrate them, but create kind of a custom system now that reality, because each business is a bit different, has different needs, right? And so much goes into an acquisition, and that was just a little brief intro for me, but it must be a fascinating role for you to have all these different businesses and working to kind of maximize those businesses, support them, but at the same time, always looking for new opportunities and building out that portfolio. Yeah,
it is very interesting, and it's been quite an interesting 3.5 years, and I look forward to what the near future brings us for sure, because I think there's some tremendous opportunities, just not only in the Yukon, but in Western North America or North America, period. Again, speaking to the point earlier, we really don't care where the opportunity is. If it's the right opportunity, we'll take advantage of that. So we've looked at opportunities in the deep south. We've looked at opportunities on the East Coast. We've looked at opportunities Alberta, Saskatchewan. It's just, again, we look north first for sure, and then from there it doesn't matter to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there any other businesses you want to talk about or that kind of represent
real estate holdings? And so we're also partners in the Yukon Inn hotels. Yeah, we were too. We exited. Yeah, it was a bit tricky to exit because we needed to find 3 to replace us. Right. As we left to, it needed to have 6 shareholders. It was a very strict agreement. Covenant and agreement. Yeah. Yeah. The Yukon Inn is, as everybody knows who lives up here, is probably one of the older hotels. We've spent a lot of money in the last 2 years doing some major renovations, and we're actually doing some exploratory work to see what else can be done, because it's a huge piece of property. Yeah. So
With the annex, you mean?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking to see what else we might be able to do, and
Right.
we'll have a report for our next board meeting in September, which I'm looking forward to. I've had a little bit of experience on buying and renovating hotels and things like that in Port Hardy, Qualilas Hotel.
Okay.
It's it turned out beautiful, and I had very little to do with the actual building of it, but
Yeah.
but the hotel itself is probably one of the jewels in the crown of the North Island for sure. So to see what the different opportunities are for the Yukon Inn is a exciting time for me, because it brings me back to 15 years ago. So,
Yeah. And just this conversation brings me back. It was my end of high school job. My dad, who was the general manager for TTLP, and was asked to come in and save the Yukon Inn. It was struggling. This is about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It was struggling at that time. And he brought my grandpa out of retirement, and they ran hotels together. And the funny thing is they're both named Doug Hogan. And my grandpa thought it was so awesome to share a business card with my dad saying general manager. One was more executive focused, one was more operational focused. And they brought me on to be security, general maintenance, and I would clean rooms if I had to, right? And but we at that time really turned it around, made some really positive investments, and just seeing that business operate, it was it has a lot of potential. Like we tapped into a lot of potential, but you can see just being in Whitehorse, how many rooms, such a unique location. You got the bar, you got the restaurant, you have the annex with all of this commercial real estate. It's quite an interesting investment.
it is. Yeah. And one of the biggest changes in the hotel industry in the last few years has been the amount of alcohol that is not being sold anymore.
Right.
It used to be one of your cash cows was being able to have the bar and pumping out a bunch of booze, but that's gone really quiet, not just here, but in North America in general.
Okay.
The amount of liquor sales has dropped by, I think, the last statistic that I saw, which was a while ago, was like 28% or something.
And that's just consumers and behavior change?
Yeah, a lot of the youth now are not drinkers.
Right.
You can put it down to legalized pot
Right.
or whatever, but and there's always in any hotel that serves alcohol, there's always you're to and froing between letting your clientele out at 2 a.m. hooping and hollering and trying to keep your guests who are sleeping happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's always a fine balance there too. And that was usually with the hotels I've been involved with, that was probably the biggest pinch point, was around how do you handle the clients that have just spent some pretty good money in your bar and the other clients that want to have a good night's sleep. So
Yes.
yeah, it's always an interesting time.
I had to go to many a room at night. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's off topic a little bit, but it's always so cool to me to see in March when the All Nations hockey tournament comes.
Yeah.
And how busy our city gets.
Mm-hmm.
And just you can't get into the Yukon Inn because the same teams have been there for 10 years, because they know if they screw up, they're not going to be allowed back, and where are they going to go? There's
Right.
no other hotel rooms, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So it's one way that they self-police each other too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but this little city gets hopping during that time. I didn't realize until I'd spent a couple springs here. So
Yeah. Something that's come up in another interview was, when you own a hotel like that, do you work with the First Nation to kind of institute required stay, like that anybody at Champagne-Ajac First Nation, for example, should stay at the Yukon Inn because it's you know what I mean?
we encourage that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the amount of discounting of rooms to all the First Nations communities, but specifically as shareholders, is significant.
Right.
So your bar rate, best available rate, is what it would be for the average person walking in off the street. And I can tell you it's significantly lower for any of the Indigenous people that
So
come.
you've already incentivized that and benefit from it.
For sure. And right or wrong, there's absolutely some struggles that can cause, right?
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure.
Indigenous or non-Indigenous, if
Yeah.
you have Castle Rock takes a bunch of rooms every year.
Yeah.
And it seems like you stay in a room longer than a week and you think you can do certain things in that room that you wouldn't if you're just staying in a normal hotel, right?
Yeah.
So it gets a little tricky at times.
Sure. I think the reason why I bring it up is 'cause, when we're talking about like Castle Rock, for instance, does Champagne-Ajac First Nation or others kind of negotiate and require, in their basis of business that these entities are used, or we were talking about it, like if an Air North investment were to happen, would we institute a requirement that if any travel is going to occur on government's benefit, that they would kind of require that travel happen at their investment. So it just kind of, are we working well together with our counterparts so that we're creating positive alignment when it comes to operational reality?
Yeah, I agree with that concept. It's a hugely important one, that we should be supporting one another's businesses as much as we possibly can. The only caveat I'd throw out there is that the business had better be doing a good job.
Right.
So if for whatever reason you're not happy with an aspect of what that business has provided to you, I don't think that you should be forced, if you will,
right,
or required.
Sometimes where you stay, it's deeply personal, right?
Sure.
You want to be here because you got your reasons.
Yep, absolutely.
And you don't want to push people away from that.
Yeah, but we, all of our businesses provide discounts specific to our shareholders, for sure.
Yeah.
And then as much as we can, extend that out to all of the 14 First Nations here. And even if you're not from here but live here now and you're Indigenous, then the opportunity's there to get a bit of a discount, for sure.
Yeah.
And then we have shareholder days. So I'll use Northerm as an example. So every spring we have a big spring sale, but we open the doors 4 hours early for all of our shareholders and our indigenous groups to come in and have first sort of crack at that spring sale, and they get their discounts there too. So
awesome.
Yeah, we try to work within the communities to make sure that we're doing the best we can to support our shareholders.
Yeah. Any other businesses or investments to mention?
Just some real estate things, and that's about it. I think what are we now? 8 different investments kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're definitely looking to make some moves here in the next period of time.
Yeah.
We've looked at some interesting opportunities outside of the territory. We looked at a casino opportunity.
I see a lot of First Nations in BC are really taking big capital stakes in BC casinos.
Yeah, this one was actually in Alberta, and it was 4, and we were going to partner with an Alberta First Nation.
Okay.
So it would have been significant. It was before the major push for other Indigenous groups to get into it. Through some relationships, I have connections into the Choctaw First Nation out of Oklahoma, and they are the largest owners and operators of casinos of any First Nations in the world.
Okay.
So when we were looking at casinos, reached into them and just leaned on them a little bit to know what questions I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to ask the right ones. And it's great to even stretch that relationship, First Nation relationship, from way up in Whitehorse all the way down to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And utilize the knowledge base that they had, and which we find, or I find quite often, is Indigenous groups are more than happy to share.
Yeah.
If you approach in a respectful manner and you do it the right way.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much information and knowledge sharing that they have.
Yeah. I recently attended with my co-owner, who's my wife, the Reservation Economic Summit in Las Vegas this year. You wouldn't believe how many Indigenous groups with deep casino money was there. And you could tell they're just wealthy.
Yeah.
So wealthy.
Yeah.
And I met the River Cree Casino group there. And it's so they were they were the popular, people, businesses were standing in line to talk to them, to wanting to partner with them and create, other services around the casino concept, and I think it's, if you can get into that, there is almost feels like an unlimited amount of wealth you can generate out of these types of concepts. Although you start, and I've talked with other groups about this Yukon. We've explored this in different ways and different times. And, you are walking a line, especially a local casino, right? You start walking that ethical, moral, you're doing a bit of a balance there, and you got to do some pros and cons there. But I think, when you're investing in a casino in a major urban center, you're not really dealing with the same. I mean, maybe you are, but it's not a local issue. You're not impacting your citizens or your shareholders directly in that same way, but it's still there.
The numbers, I think, is the number game is you'd probably have a smaller percentage, but they're still absolutely. It's one of the things that I don't think. Let me change that. It's one of the things that I believe we all have to do better at is really understanding the unforeseen consequences of some of the things that we get involved in. Mining camps or remote camps. I come from a logging background too, so I've seen firsthand what a logging camp can do to a small community. And yes, it brings a lot of money in, but oh my goodness, the strife that can come out of that, and all the sort of conflict, both any conflict you can imagine can come out of that. So if you enter into it in a good way and have systems set up so that people are protected, everybody's protected, it can go the right way. But don't also want to be that nanny state, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I think as we grow the different businesses in the north or anywhere, we should all remain cognizant of what could be unintended consequences, right?
Yeah. And so when you're looking at investments, what area is getting you more excited right now? Like, are you looking at energy? Are you looking at, where's kind of piquing your interest right now?
Yeah. The biggest thing for me is I'm not centered on any one thing. My honest opinion is the Yukon BC grid work that was thrown out there for $20 million. Okay, made the headlines. Yeah, there's some money flowing, but ultimately, what are we going to get out of that? There's no way BC is going to be selling the power to the Yukon any cheaper than what they can sell it down to the States for. Are they maybe thinking it might flow the other way eventually? Like maybe we're going to become an energy power of some kind eventually. I don't know. Yeah. I know that the billions of dollars of infrastructure that has to go into the transmission lines is real. Yeah. So if we're talking about how do we get off diesel generators and all that sort of stuff, which I agree, we absolutely have to. But there's so much more that has to be involved with that process, right?
Yeah.
I was blessed to be on the north end of Vancouver Island when they opened up, at that time, one of the largest wind farms.
Okay.
And the biggest
offshore?
No, it was it was right on the shore.
Yeah.
With the ocean winds blew very consistently.
Yeah.
And it was only, I think, built out to a third of its capacity because there was no transmission lines.
Right.
And then when you talk to the BC government, they said, oh, yeah, we're going to get there. We're going to do your transmission lines. But we're going to go there first and there second, and back down to Vancouver third, and then maybe to the Vancouver Island. So we're talking 12, 14 years.
Yeah. I think we're experiencing the same thing in the Yukon.
Yeah. So it's energy is hugely important. And I think we all have to think differently about it. I'm a huge proponent of nuclear.
Me too.
Whether it's small modular or otherwise. Yeah. I think the bad rap that nuclear's gotten, if people were to do the research and actually understand, instead of just believing the headlines or the propaganda, and actually started, I think there's only 2 people ever died from a nuclear accident in North America.
Right, in the lower states.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So...
and Canada is a world leader in nuclear technology.
Absolutely. I was born in Petawawa, Ontario, and there's an amazing test going on in that small city around a small modular nuclear reactor. And they're showing tremendous opportunities. I mean, you can build it now so that it's 98% recyclable, and the 2% that you might be concerned with is pre-buried before you even build out the structure. So when it comes time, you just close it in. Yes, it's going to be an extended period of time, but the footprint is extremely small. But Yeah, there's way smarter people than me that are looking at this
Yeah.
small modular reactors.
Yeah.
But that's where I think we need to go.
Yeah.
Running 17 diesel generators or whatever the heck it is now. Every time I turn around, I hear there's another one going up. But
Yeah.
never mind the cost or the green effect on the environment. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. It's not a long-term solution for sure.
No.
Yeah. And then are you tracking the geothermal kind of opportunities and conversations?
Yeah. So again, Shawshoe, because it's in the traditional territory,
Yeah.
Shawshoe's sort of leading that charge, but I'm absolutely paying attention to it.
Because there's a major investment opportunity around that once you get to like the development stage.
For sure. But it's so expensive
Oh yeah.
to prove out.
Oh yeah. But we got Department of National Defense that want to throw money at it. Like that, there is, I'm kind of part of these conversations, and there's money to punch a bunch of holes and do some data. There's money once you're ready to build. Canada, they don't have a geothermal energy plant in Canada yet.
Yeah, which is just
they want
mind.
it, and Department of National Defense wants it north. And when they did their assessment, they're like, Yukon's the only place in the north that we can do this feasibly.
Yep.
And Whitehorse area is kind of the heat load that we would need to make this all work. Or industry, if a big industry came about, or maybe the prospect of geothermal somewhere would justify a huge industry that's very heat cost sensitive.
Right.
And all of a sudden, and I mean, they keep talking about data centers, and I know there's a lot of negatives there, and but it is seemingly becoming a bigger part of our reality. And I'm uncertain about the water aspect to it, but when you look at these types, when I was in Iceland, data centers is a big part of their new economy because they got cheap electricity, they got unlimited heat, and they're connected to the world grid, and so they're building them like crazy there.
Yeah, the water issue is an issue now, but like any new technology, as they get better at it, you're going to see that become less and less of an issue. The photonics chips that are being created now, they're still probably a couple of years out, but the cooling requirements for those is basically nothing.
Right.
Yeah, it's an
And you can use heat for cooling too.
100%. Yeah.
So I mean, I think that geothermal or even nuclear throws a ton of heat. Like I think any of those large scale energy deployments are combined heat power. Now you gotta, if you want 50 megawatts of electricity, you better have a 200 megawatt use for heat that's going to be coming available real quick.
And that's power was certainly something that was top of my mind for quite a while. So hydrogen, yeah, it's a great concept and wonderful, but it takes so much power,
right,
to generate your hydrogen,
right,
that at the end of the day, your electricity or your power going into the process had better be free,
right,
or near free. And there's not very many of those.
You need to have a surplus power base
100%.
to make that work.
Yeah, for sure, for certain. Yeah, the geothermal is exciting because we do have some really good relationships with Iceland, and they've been really straightforward with us, saying we will share with you anything and everything that we have, including our expertise. Yes, you might have to hire them, but who better to hire than somebody who's got 25 or 30 years of proven track record?
That's right.
And it wouldn't just be they would come in and train and make sure everybody's brought up to speed and is doing it well.
Yeah, they're doing it in Kenya. Iceland is building it out. They're in China building it out. They supported New Zealand just recently, or over the last 10, 15 years, building out their geothermal potential. And their priority is Yukon.
Right.
They're coming to me. They're coming to us.
Yep.
They're going into our traditional territories. They're traveling up to the Yukon. I was invited to the World Geothermal Congress a few months ago. I spoke on a bunch of their panels, and I have a stack of business cards and MOUs that I'm signing right now because I'm trying to build out that network of deep experience set into how do you build out geothermal properly? What are the proper steps to get it to start setting the table, to get the right people around, to get the right data? Where do you access the capital? How do you move these things forward? Because I personally see geothermal. I see nuclear, but nuclear is got a long road, and we should start it now. And geothermal has a long road too, but I don't think it's as long, especially if you can really get that data that drilling and that data in place, it wouldn't take long to build. Like there's a lot of CapEx there, but these things are pretty straightforward.
Absolutely. And what a lot of these high intensity type projects that take a lot of the cash, eventually you'll see some really big players step in and want to buy that opportunity from you. The big retirement funds or those types of companies that are interested in owning it for the next 20 years and getting a really steady return on their income, right?
Yeah.
So there's room for all levels of investment in that particular industry, for sure.
Yeah, you got the big fish, but I definitely, anything like that, it's got to have the wealth entities, the Indigenous wealth entities have to be a big player at that table.
I couldn't agree with you.
I don't see it moving forward without that.
Well, I don't know how far I want to go down this road, but the CAFN is not into mining. It's not something that is top of priority, and I don't know that it ever will be.
Sure.
But one of the biggest deposits of critical minerals in the world is within the traditional territory of the CAFN. So we get people running at the nation all the time. And the biggest thing for me is I say to the people, have you approached chief and have you talked to the nation to make sure that it's something that is of interest to them? And most of the time it's no.
Or they have, but they've been discounted a long time ago.
Yeah. And
it's a wall now.
Exactly. A wall, or they'll try to come around the wall to the economic development. And the first question out of my mouth was, who have you talked to at the nation?
Yeah.
And usually when somebody says, hey, I got a ton of jobs and we're going to put in a fish ladder, I go, okay, go away.
Yeah.
You're not speaking my language.
Yeah.
Right? You're not speaking business. Jobs to me is actually a negative.
Right.
And that might sound counterintuitive, but we don't have that many people unemployed.
Right.
The individuals within our communities that want to work are working. And the other ones that aren't able to, for whatever reason, everybody's working to try to get them in a place where they can start to go to work. You start adding more people, we don't have the housing. We don't have a lot of the infrastructure.
Yes.
So when you start talking and throwing out jobs just willy-nilly, I go, you don't understand us. You don't understand the situation.
Yeah.
Right? So it always makes it interesting. I want to touch on a project. It's around energy. When I first got up here, I had an interesting relationship with a gentleman called Brian Fair, and he's one of the few billionaires in Canada. He's an interesting gentleman. He was on Skid Row at one time in his life, had drug and alcohol issues, and pulled himself up, got himself going straight, created a really large industrial construction company, and sold it for $1.5 billion or something, all on his own, bootstraps. So he continued in the industry doing some other things. I knew him. He said, hey, we're shutting a mill down. It's got a 15 megawatt pellet plant, pellet plant. Do you have interest? I said, absolutely. Set it up in Haines Junction. We got all that beetle kill. You've got the export connections to take commercial size pellets overseas. The process itself generates a tremendous amount of heat. There's some infrastructure in Haines Junction that is already pre-piped to have this heat go into some of these buildings. Everything was lining up. You think I could get anybody from forestry to come and talk to me?
I hear this. Yeah.
And it's sorry, my forestry folks in the Yukon government, but you got to do better.
Yeah.
When I first heard that they were trucking pellets in from out of territory to run some of their plants, I'm like, are you kidding me? How is that green?
Yeah.
Tell me how that's green.
Yeah.
So
or NWT, who's a major consumer of pellets.
Yeah.
Bringing in from Alberta or sometimes Quebec.
Exactly.
And they have to truck some, not through the Yukon always or ever, but close to, just south of our border.
Yeah. So that's the type of project that really gets me excited, even though it's greenfield, and technically we shouldn't be getting involved in too much greenfield stuff, but basically that one plant would provide you with 4 or 5 products. So you take a decent sized tree into your yard, and if you can turn it into a cant or something you can ship off to the mill, That's the highest use possible that you can do for it. Any of the fall down goes into your pellets. Pellets get sold. The heat, electricity that's generated. Like Haines Junction would have been a power provider to the connection to all the infrastructure. But again, you can only, our business life cycle is really quite short for something like that.
Yep.
You can only get so many no's. And we talked earlier about
Yep.
money doesn't like uncertainty.
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't like getting no a couple of times on something that's pretty straightforward. Right?
Yeah. Well, and when you start looking at environmental trends too, with how many forest fires are happening and the effort of communities right now of getting ahead of that with comprehensive wildfire protection planning, doing their fire breaks. When you look at a fire break, and I'm my focus is Teslin, but when we're looking at the fire break there, and we have a biomass energy system that takes about 1.5 megawatts or distributes 1.5 megawatts of heat every year, and we're just utilizing incidentally harvested wood. But that fire break, which is 8 kilometers long and could be anywhere between 50 and 100 meters wide, is going to be 8 to 10 years of energy for that community. Do you think we would be able to utilize it? No, because that wood can't sit that long.
That's right.
And so if you're not getting ahead of this, and every community is dealing with this, and every community is going to be building fire breaks if they haven't already, and what is going to happen to that wood? So I think, and then you mentioned Haines Junction with the beetle kill. And I would say that the uncertainty around fiber for all wood products in the Yukon has been so disastrous that we're seeing mills and we're seeing forest, even firewood providers going out of business because it's so inconsistent. Now we have like 2 or 3 players now delivering firewood like on a large scale. And and I'm participating at the Yukon Biomass Summit that's going to be happening here in the next number of months. And, we're really trying to take this on. Like, are we doing everything we can as a Yukon economy, as a government, as citizens, as industry, as investors to make sure that these opportunities not only exist, but that we're getting ahead of them and we're benefiting from all of this alignment? Because, if there was any ability to have that foresight in government and forestry, when you were asking that, they should have saw this lines up well with what we see happening. But for some reason, that foresight is missing, or they're not incentivized to be proactive. And it's just so frustrating. And then we're constantly behind the ball. Well, now we're going to have to generate all this fiber. Well, what are we going to do with it? Well, we would have had an excellent use for it if you had been a little bit more open to other things. And now it's too late, or now who the hell's going to go chase this down so reactively?
Well, I'll tell you that the power plant that we were looking at to move up here, within 3 weeks of me saying, I don't think I can get this thing done, landed in Mississippi.
Right.
And it's going full bore.
Oh, it is,
Full bore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's powering one of the major mills down there. And they're also selling pellets. Like everything that we envisioned here, they're doing down there.
Yeah.
But the industry that they're supporting is a very large lumber mill.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
But it like we're talking, if you wait too long on these business ideas, there's other people that are doing it as well or better than you are, and they will act on that, right?
Yeah.
So
I keep reflecting on what is the problem here. And and I know you're fairly new to the Yukon, but you're very aware that we went through the final agreement phase. And you think about the leadership that was in that room, from communities, from government, from federal government, to get that through the door. And they had a couple false starts, and it was there's books on it and documentaries, like such an interesting process. And it did it didn't go through, I think, in the early 70s or 80s, when it was richer but less integrative of other governments and their ability to participate as a tri-government table. But you look at what was required as far as leadership on all levels of government then, and you think about today, it's like, and that leadership's still around. Like my first interview was Tony Pennicott, which was the premier of the Yukon government, through devolution and then through self-government agreements. And
He's seen a few things.
He's seen a few things.
Yeah.
And you think about all the chiefs and all the elders and all the people that were part of that process. You think about that level of leadership that was needed, and the ability to engage and get the consensus and move that forward. What the hell is missing today? Mm-hmm. I feel like we just are in a deficit of leadership. And I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but I feel it's true. I feel like we've coasted on the success of our forebears for so long now. And, and I had Stephen Mooney on, we talked about why are we so far behind in Canada when it comes to renewable energy technologies and technologies in general. And it's just, we've been so coddled in our success, and we just haven't had to take risk, and we're not used to it, and we just don't want to. And now we're at crux, we're at the pivotal moments, and we're not able to make those hard decisions, take those leaps of faith, move things forward in a way that we need to. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's leadership is tough to find at the best of times, and when you turn it into a government civil servant type of position, and mm-hmm. that's anybody that's working in government, you're a civil servant.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easier just to be the server instead of the leader.
Yeah.
But a lot of those roles take leadership. And there are some amazing individuals, mm-hmm. but there's also some that just career civil servants, and that's okay for them. But when it comes to doing business, you're hoping to have that bright-eyed, visionary type of leadership in all levels of government that can see the future as you see it, or as the community sees it, which is more important than just one individual. It's back to the self-governing agreements. I mean, amazing work, so much blood, sweat, and tears. And unfortunately, some elders were lost along the way that never got to see it come to fruition.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing and seeing a little bit right now is quite frustrating, because some of our nations are heading to Ottawa to have some government-to-government conversations. Mm-hmm. And either during the conversation or just afterwards, they're going, well, why don't you guys come as a group? Mm-hmm. What are you talking about? We're a self-governing nation.
Right.
That's what we did all that hard work, blood, sweat, and tears for.
We're here to represent ourselves.
Yeah. Now you're telling us we should be coming as a group of 5 or 6 First Nations from the Yukon. How does that work?
Yeah.
So that one might get me in trouble.
Yeah.
But I think it's asinine. Like, the nation spent so much time and money in it. Again, blood, sweat, and tears to get into the position of being self-governed. Yeah. That now, when it's time to talk to the higher political people in Ottawa, they absolutely should be government-to-government conversations. Yeah. Not government to multi-governments.
Or government to bureaucrat. You see that it doesn't always get recognized that if I have a chief that's coming to you, it needs to be the prime minister or a premier or a minister. Don't be sending me your directors or managers. Like that doesn't, we're not at the same level.
No.
And I think that's a big misstep. I see it happen all the time.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other interesting thing that I saw just lately is went to Ottawa for a procurement conference specifically for military.
Okay.
And maybe it's just me, but I found it quite disheartening that they spent probably 80% of the time talking about reconciliation. What does that mean?
Right.
Right. And I thought we were way past that as a nation, right? Yeah. Especially coming into Ottawa, where I had higher hopes,
right,
or different expectations for sure.
Yeah.
So that one kind of set me back too, because as difficult as reconciliation is in a province like British Columbia, 220 different First Nations in British Columbia, 14 here in the Yukon, right?
Yeah.
Totally different worlds, so to speak. but they're all heading in the same type of direction, especially around reconciliation.
Yeah.
Right? They're not looking for handouts. They're looking for ways to continue to grow their nations in the way that their people want to grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hugely important.
I think also too, like there's been so many back steps that's been happening across Canada when you look at some of the BC land issues that have occurred, some of the Alberta separatism conversations. There's, I feel like reconciliation overall is starting to erode a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree.
And I mean, when it comes to people like us who are implementers of self-government agreements through the economic development or however, it really makes our job a lot more difficult. And so, I mean, I feel we should be a lot further past this. Like, you know, we're 30 plus years of implementing, and you know, as a multi-ethnic country, we definitely have acknowledged and need to continue to acknowledge the first landholders of this country. But I feel like things are getting more complicated. I feel like every day instead of becoming simpler.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I really don't. It's it's a very difficult time, especially for some of those movements that you just spoke about. As far as I'm concerned, there's no room for that, but there's always going to be political discourse, and there's going to be people that are upset with different things that are happening. It's when people start becoming disrespectful of history and really well documented history.
Right. The denialism that's occurring, which is very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, for sure. The one bright side is all these nations that are entering into the treaty process and getting close to their final agreements. The vast majority are looking north,
right,
to see the example that has been set.
Yeah,
and that's not lost on me. The things that we do on a daily basis might not seem that impactful, but over the course of a year, 2, 3 years, when these nations are coming up to go, hey, how did you do this? And us being willing to share the trials and tribulations of doing the process, right? Not only the implementation, but how we've moved forward over the last 30 years, especially for me, just from coming from the outside. So much has happened in the last 10 to 12 years. It's quite astonishing, actually. It's pretty cool.
I would even go further with that, saying that on the economic side, that across Canada, there doesn't seem to be that ability, that capitalization aspect that the Yukon First Nations, and I would say across the North, because I don't think we're solely the ones that have major ability to invest, but we're not looking for handouts. We're not looking for free capital, or free equity. We have capital to invest. We are sophisticated investors. And when you look across the board in the Yukon specifically, we are the largest private investor groups. And that's pretty unique, I think, across Canada right now. Like when we were in London and talking with many of the other groups that were also there, that's not the case. You know, I think we're in a pretty special position that we've had so much time now with our self-government agreements, and we've had some of that original funding that we've now created such huge economic wealth bases. And we've, and a lot of us too, and I think Champagne Ajax was part of this, we've had some of the early starts and stops.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Because I think a bunch of us, Champagne, Teslin, a few others, got into the forestry business too soon without having all the sophistication there. We all bought sawmills.
Yeah.
And then, and we went through, I worked at mine. And it was such an economic sweetheart. Everybody was gainfully employed, loved working there. But because of the tariffs at the time, protectionism of the day, we were selling at a loss to our American clients. And we were just kind of operating because it all worked and we loved it. And politically, we decided to just keep working, and we dug ourselves into a hole, had to do a bit of a reset. So, like we've I think a bunch of us have done that early mistakes, and then became politically arm length, and now we're at a much more sophisticated, diverse status, and we're operating at such a mature basis now that without that history, and a lot of them are just starting or earlier across Canada, I would say.
Yeah, there's a few things that I enjoy talking to people about that are just getting started into the economic development world within the Indigenous groups. For me, it comes down to making sure that the relationship is strong, and that relationship is in community relationship, intergovernmental relationship, whatever the relationship is, has to be strong, because you're not always going to have winners.
Right.
You're not. It's impossible.
Yeah.
The smartest stock person our generation's ever heard of still holds his biggest loser on his portfolio as a reminder.
Is that Warren Buffett?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's like, of course he's going to do that
Yeah.
because it drives the point home, right?
Yeah.
But you're not always going to have winners.
Yeah.
So if you can have those hard conversations when things are going well, it's going to really help you to have those conversations when things don't go well. And that's the one piece that Dakwakada, our investment arm, is we're high risk, right? And what that means,
But high return.
hopefully, yeah, absolutely.
ideally.
That's what we're all working for.
Yeah.
But high risk means different things to different people,
Right.
right? So, whereas a community corp might not be as they'll be a little bit more risk adverse, and then your trusts are really risk averse, right?
Yeah.
Because they
Yeah.
enter into the bond markets or the stock markets under different avenues. But so it'll be a slower, steady return, and then a little bit faster return, and a little bit more return with the community corps. And then when you get into the private equity, there's some hammers that are swinging out there that you got to keep ducking every once in a while. So
Yeah.
but the relationship and the communication part of that relationship is huge.
Yeah.
Really big. Because again, when things are going great, everybody likes to have the conversation. When things start going sideways, you got to still have those conversations, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And so in reflecting in all of what we talked about and all the work you're doing, what do you see as possible for the Yukon, for Yukon wealth entities? What are some, is there any one thing that you would say is something we really need to keep an eye on, or you're really hopeful for? This is kind of a positive note to maybe end the interview with.
well, just the sheer fact of how much people love living here. The ancestors of our communities knew that a long time ago, so it's nothing new to them. But we're slowly becoming an area where we're going to be self-perpetuating wealth cycles and life cycles and all that sort of stuff. And to me, that's really exciting, because there's going to be more opportunities for entrepreneurs, more opportunity for the nations, more opportunity for people that want to come and live in one of the most beautiful places on the world, to come and actually be able to raise families in a healthy way. That's really exciting to me.
Yeah.
Is there any one sector that I'm interested in? I'm really curious to see what AI is going to do just to our everyday life, but more importantly, the business.
Right.
We can do things now with AI in our financial reports that just are mind-blowing. A year ago,
Yeah.
you wouldn't even think about it, and it's come so fast, so far.
Yeah.
So far, so fast.
Yeah.
So AI is a big piece that I'm kind of curious about. The critical minerals. I mean, that's, even though the nation CAFN's not interested in it at this point in time, I'm keeping an eye out to see what some of the other plays are and how they come to fruition. On a really out there notion, I'm keeping an eye on Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's huge opportunities and investments in businesses in Africa. It's a completely different animal,
Right.
but it's the fastest growing middle class in the world.
Right.
And the amount of technology that they're
Well,
utilizing.
that's such an interesting thing to think about. Fastest middle class is happening in Africa.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. And then India is close behind that.
Okay.
Too,
Right.
They might be 1 and 2 or one way or the other.
Yeah.
But yeah. Africa's got my attention because of all the things that the world needs right now. They
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
They're getting more sophisticated in their political systems. They need to do better jobs with their Indigenous people, but that's a different story altogether. So there's different opportunities. It's just how far fetched one wants to go, and what are you actually envisioning, right? So, it's an interesting time. It's a very interesting time. I think our business world is going to change significantly in the next 10 years as to what the different opportunities might be. And just like the internet, when it first came out, it was like, what are you going to do with this thing? And now we do everything with it.
Right.
So it's
the real game changers.
Yeah. But it all takes time.
Yeah.
You got that initial flush of money going in, and then all of a sudden it disappears, and stock markets crash and do all that good stuff. But no, it's an important time from a private equity perspective to really keep to see what's happening. Yeah. And then from being responsible to my community is making sure that we're getting returns, and then also reinvesting back into our community when we can through the trust. I think it's hugely important. Yeah. That's one thing I will give CAFN huge kudos, and especially the people that work within the economic development arm within the government of CAFN. They've got more entrepreneurs coming out of Haines Junction than it absolutely blows my mind. And they're doing such a great job of encouraging and working with them and training and opportunities. And like, I can't remember the number, but I think the last time I heard it was close to 100 different entrepreneurs in the last number of years. Yeah, so. I agree. I think that economic development arm of Champagne-Ajac is probably one of the better, well-run, and I remember they had their economic development plan that was so groundbreaking 15 years ago. Yeah. And we're all circulating it. And, when you see some of those things that kind of instigate business startup and support education and well-being, like I think it's done really well. I agree. Yeah. So at the end of the day, whether it's in the north or down south, the goal for myself for sure is making sure we're bringing back as much money as possible from the south back to the north and reinvesting it back into our communities, because for far too long, the money's been flowing out of the north down to the south. And it's time to turn that table. And there's a few First Nations that are also working towards that. And that's so exciting to me. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think we're going to end it there. I think this was a fantastic conversation. I appreciate the invitation. And thank you so much for taking this interview on so last minute. And it's all good. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.